Okay, so the first thing that you'll want to do when you log into Gmail, it'll actually go into your mail screen. This is not your mail screen. There's a little grid application icon up here, and let me reset my screen dimensions. There. So here it is, and if you click on that, you can select the drive option, and then it'll take you to something that looks like this. I'm going to click on the Create button, and I'm going to go to Select Drawing. And so it'll give me my first drawing. And then the first thing I like to do is I like to title my drawing. So click on the title, and we'll call this RWD for Responsive Web Design. And we'll call it 01, and we'll call it Desktop Layout. Okay, because that's the first one we're going to start with. All right, so we have this general layout right here. And basically what I want to do is I want to draw some boxes and label them so that I can start to see how I'm supposed to build my document in HTML. And I get a visual sense of what it's supposed to look like, so that once I even have my HTML, then I go to do my CSS, I can know exactly what my intentions are and how to apply the CSS to make it look similar to the document. Now I'm not going to make everything perfect, but I'm just going to do a basic outline or a wireframe. So if I click here on shape, I can choose the rectangular shape. The first section of my website is going to be the header. So this is my header. And the other thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and choose this little text box here, and I'll click inside, and I'm going to type the word header. Okay. Now if I want to move this, I hover until I get this four-headed arrow, all right, and then I can click and I can grab the whole thing and I can align it. And I can also drag this handle in if I click and drag it like this. So now you can see that I have my header up here. All right, that's my basic header. Now I would like to go ahead and create a footer. So I'm going to create a footer by not just drawing it again, but I want to show you how to duplicate something by clicking, dragging, and constraining the proportions. So if I select the box, all right, the box is selected, and then if I hold down my Shift key and I select where it says header, now you can see that I've got the header text box and the actual vector drawing box selected. And now that those two things are selected, if I just click here, hold down my mouse, and on Windows I would hold down Shift for constraining on the Y-axis up and down, and also on Windows I hold down Control. That's going to duplicate. So right now what I have is my mouse held down first, and then Shift, and then Control, and then I'm going to drag it down like this, and then I let up off of my mouse key first, and now I can let up off of my keyboard keys, and it's created a duplication of those items. On a Mac, instead of holding down Control for duplication, you'll do everything the same except you'll hold down the Option key. Option is traditionally, like in Illustrator and Photoshop and those kinds of tools, Option is traditionally the tool that you would hold down to duplicate an item that is a vector-based item. But in Windows, you hold down Control to do it for this application. All right, so now we've got that created. If I click off of it somewhere, which I just did, I can now go back to where it says header, and I can change that to the word footer. Okay, so now I've got a header and I have a footer. And the footer I actually am going to probably want to be a little bit larger than this. So if I click it, I can grab this handle until I get the two-headed arrow. And I'm probably going to want it to be somewhere in that vicinity, at least for now. And then I can also click and move my footer up and align it. Okay, so the next thing I want is I want to see what some floated boxes are going to look like, but I want more than just floated boxes. I want the ability to have some different sections that will have maybe a single column and then maybe another one that's got like thirds, let's say. Okay, I'm going to draw some sections first. So I'm going to take my shape tool again. I'm going to draw a new box. And let's say here that I've got, this is a section, okay? And if you want to make these different colors so you can kind of get a better sense of what it is that you're doing, then what I can do up here is I can come and I can find this fill icon, and then I can tell it, let's say, to be a different color. Let's say we want this to be white. it doesn't have to be white in your actual HTML page, but just for the diagram's sake, you can go ahead and make it like this. And then I'm going to also take another text object and I'm going to type in section. And then for this one, I want to make a class, not an ID, but a class. Okay, and I'm going to make it equal to the word whole. And that means that any article that I put inside of here is going to take up 100% or close to 100% of the space. So it's going to fill up essentially the entire block, and then in my CSS I could give it margins or gutters. But so for now, I'm going to go ahead and align this up here, and just so that this is not taking up so much space, I can go ahead and I can tell it to be a smaller font size. Okay, and I can draw this out smaller. Okay, so now we've got a basic section here. Now inside of that, I'm going to draw another shape again, and this time let's say that this is going to be the thing that we visibly see on the screen, and it's going to have margins somewhere around here, like on this side, on the right side, and on the left side. It'll be automatically centered, but this will be an article. So let's call it an article. Okay, and I don't necessarily have to give the article any kind of ID, because I understand that the way I'm going to write my styling is that any article that is inside of the whole section will take up a certain percentage. Okay, and so this is sort of the way we can start to think about building a grid system. Now if I want, I can take this whole thing and I could duplicate it. If you want, if you don't like duplicating, if you want, you can just draw new boxes. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you how to select all the components, where I select this text box, I select this text box, I select the vector box, and then the smaller vector box inside of it. And now I've got this whole set selected. I can click, Control Shift Drag, or if you're on a Mac, Option Shift Drag, and I'm going to duplicate it. Now I'm not going to create another whole section. You could create different page layouts where you say, okay, well I want one of my pages where everything just takes up entire blocks. But right now we're going to make a page layout where we can see some different options. So I'm going to click off of that somewhere. Okay, so it deselects. And now what I want to do is, instead of this being the class of whole, we're going to create this as the class of thirds. Not with a U, with an I. Okay, thirds. So we have a class of thirds on that parent section. Okay, now we have the article inside. Well, I want to create a setup so that I can have 3 articles floated side by side. So if I want to take up approximately a third, somewhere in that vicinity, maybe a little bit more, we'll see, then what I can do now is I can click on the word article, and instead of having to select both of these every single time, I can actually group this article and I can make it so that it will stay selected together. So if I go up to where it says arrange, I can click on group, and also you see that there's a shortcut command over here, and so now they're grouped, and anytime I select this, it'll select both the article text and the article box. So if I click on this and I do Shift Control again to drag it, I can make it so that now I've got one off to the side, and now I can see where the one in the center would go, and it should help guide me, and then it shows me the guides. Alright, and these are pretty big margins. It looks like maybe I didn't make my box large enough, so I'm just going to delete those again. It's going to be a lot easier for me to drag this out and then duplicate it. So let's say that I need to make it about that big. Okay, and you want to make them so that the margins and the gutters are all pretty consistent. And let's see how that looks. And that looks a little bit better. So now that looks like something that would be representative, that's going to take up thirds. And if you want, so that you can easily see that the article is inside of the section, what you can do is you can apply color to it. I'll go ahead and apply sort of like a gray color. And on these articles, I'll do the same. So that way, I've got, let's make these a little bit darker of a color so that you can see the difference. Maybe I'll make it this gray, and I'll make the whole one like a lighter gray, sort of like that, so you can immediately tell the difference in the way that they look. Okay, and what I can do now is I can go ahead and take this where it says section equals thirds. I'm going to click on that big box and I'm going to drag it down so that it's a little bit bigger. Okay, and then now what I can do is take these these articles and I can duplicate them this way. Okay, so that we've got another duplication, and then you can see that the page starts to get broken up. All right, and these margins don't have to be exactly like this for the top and bottoms, but the idea is that you're getting them approximately equal in between all the way across from side to side. All right, now we have a basic layout where we're going to end up seeing article that has a whole section, and it's like literally inside the section called whole, and then we have another section called thirds that has floated articles that take up thirds of the page. And the other thing that I could do, if this starts to become confusing to look at with all the boxes and stuff, is that I could take this article and I could take this article, and then I could change the type of line so I can make it like a dotted line or a dashed line, so that you can see that maybe my intention is not for us to actually see the boundaries of that section, but they're just containing sections. Okay. All right. So the next thing that I would consider is in the footer. You know, you might want to have like columns of links. You can decide on your own if you want to have 3 columns or 2 columns or what have you. Let's just say that we're going to go ahead and duplicate this article, and actually what we need to do is we also need to create a section. So let's create the section first before we do anything. I'm going to go ahead and drag my shape out, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to start the section here so that I guess it probably also still needs to take up the entire space if we want them to be in line with these articles. Okay, and we can change some of this later if we decide we don't like the way it looks. It's not that big of a deal. All right, but this one, let's say, is going to also have a dotted line so that we can, or a dashed line is what we did before, so that we can see that it is also a section. And I'm going to copy this where it says section thirds, and I'll place it right there. Okay, make that a little bit narrower. Okay, and so now we've got another section down inside of the footer, and now we can put these 3 articles inside of there. Copy and paste, and then now you see that we've got these articles. And it's up to you. The other thing that you're going to see later that we can do is if you want these articles not to have a background color, maybe these will have a background color or picture or border or something, and you don't want these to have the same, but you want them to take the same dimensioning, then you can also apply a second class if you want, where you tell it that you want them to be, let's say, transparent or something like that. And then what'll happen is you can apply 2 classes where you say one of the classes is thirds, and then you put a space, and then you put transparent, and then it applies 2 classes to this section, and it will cascade down to any rules that you tell it to have for these articles in the footer. Okay, so that's giving us a basic page layout for the desktop, and you can see, as I said here, we have the header, and then we have a section that provides us a place to put articles that will take the entire block's area. And then we have a section for thirds where any article that goes inside of it is going to take up a third of the space and float so that they will do a wrap. Okay, and then the same is going to be true down inside of the footer. And this is just, as I said before, this is just getting us started for the desktop. You can do the same drawings for the next set, and we'll break that into a different demonstration for your tablet views and for then again for your phone views, and we'll discuss that later. Okay, that's the end of this demo.